This is Power BI and More from CRM Audio with Ulrich Carlson, the CRM chart guy, and Business Solutions MVP Joel Lindstrom. This episode is brought to you by KingswaySoft. KingswaySoft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise clients from over 70 countries and regions rely on KingswaySoft to integrate data with various business systems in order to drive their business efficiency and fully leverage their information assets. KingswaySoft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, NAV, GP, SL, as well as many other applications. Check out their website at kingswaysoft.com. We thank KingswaySoft for sponsoring Power BI and More from CRM Audio. So I think this is a more day.
Yes.
So let's take our Power BI hats off and go into CRM charts. There's lots of great things in Power BI, but there's plenty of things that you can do out of the box with CRM charts. So
right. Absolutely.
So what have you got for us?
So, one of the benefits still of using the charts and dashboards directly in CRM is obviously they're live. You can still do a lot with them. And they have less complexity. You don't have to pull data in somewhere else. You don't have to build another data model. We're basically just using the data model that is in Dynamics 365. And you can do a number of cool things with the charts and really give some additional insight to the data that you have there. For example, you can do sales leaderboard charts where you can actually highlight the current user. So when you log in, you have your own line and you can see exactly where in the position of what position you have on the sales leaderboard. You can also, with some modifications, you can also chart on many-to-many relationships. So you can actually also create charts that displays the competitive strengths on all your opportunities, so you can see who you're competing against, who you're losing to, how much revenue, for example, is currently outstanding, or what you're competing against certain competitors. All just with the regular charts. And you can also use them for admin purposes. I've used this actually quite a bit recently. I created some charts that showed the security roles, how many users have been assigned various security roles and field security roles. I wrote a blog post about that recently that I noticed a lot of people downloaded the samples, but you just load those charts in there and you go to the users and you view the charts and you can see who's got what security role and how many people have each security role. And I added some other a few extra versions that also shows the field security role, so you can compare those. And especially for consultants here, where we work in a lot of different environments, and you log in and you can easily see, you get an idea of how everything is structured. You can also see if somebody may be missing roles. I easily see if somebody have too many roles, for example, more than anticipated, without having to look up on each individual user.
Well, that sounds great, but you probably have to do some pretty advanced XML chart surgery to do that stuff. You have to be a wizard, not a muggle, right?
So, hopefully that's been made easier. Earlier, actually last year, I was going to say earlier this year, but last year, a friend and I, this friend I've actually met in Dubai, Mohammed Rashid, we worked together on an advanced chart editor that's available in the XM Toolbox. And what you can do with the chart editor is that it actually enables you to edit the XML and edit every single property in the chart basically in a visual format. So you basically have drop-down fields for every single property that's available. So when you log in and you can see all your chart properties, your series properties, you can select the label, you can select the font type, the font size, you can specify exactly what you want to write in the legend. You have color pickers, so you can take a specific series and say, hey, I don't want the blue color on this one. I want, have a green color, and specify exactly what green color you want. Add transparency and so on to the charts. So you get so you can actually do all of those edits without having to learn a single piece of XML, how that XML is structured. You can basically just play around inside the tool itself in order to get that, try things out basically.
So is there a relationship between that and the tool Tangy had? I know there was a chart editor in there. Are they related to each other?
They are very much related. We actually talked to Tangy here in the beginning and asked him if we could borrow the chart manager that he had on there. And the chart manager has some great features in there. So when you open up the advanced chart editor, you're actually seeing the chart manager. And when you open up on a chart and look at the XML, there is a button that says Open Visual Editor. And that's when you click on that, that's where you get access to all the properties and can manage all of the different properties. So that's primarily the area that we've been focusing on. And when we have made a few minor tweaks to the original tool as well. But most of the work we've actually put in basically just creating that visual editor, whereas the chart manager is basically like the basis of it, because it was what we were looking for to do, so there was really no reason to reinvent the wheel. So Tangy there was gracious enough to let us use a part of the code.
Yeah, that's great. So if you are creating a chart and adding all these whiz-bang things like the sales chart that shows you highlighted when you look at it, are you starting in the front-end chart builder, building the chart, then firing up the XRM toolbox and the advanced chart editor and loading it? Can you create a new chart through the XRM toolbox advanced chart editor?
So what I always do is when I need to create a new chart, I create as much of it inside the Dynamics 365. So open up the chart editor, click New, and add as much, I get as close as I want inside that editor. Then I open up the toolbox, and then I select that specific chart, and then I basically start changing all the advanced properties and making all the modifications that I cannot do inside the editor. And I do that because just so I have the chart, so whenever I push updates, there you do have some options in the editor where you can save a chart. So you can basically open up a chart and say save as and create a new chart. The challenge there, specifically in your environments, is that it'll always save it as the type of chart that it is. So if you're selecting a system chart and say save as, in order to create a new version, it'll create a new system chart for you. And generally when you work with the charts, you want to keep them as user charts until you're done, and then you can basically upload them as a system chart instead. You have a much faster experience modifying the charts that way, because when you update a user chart, and this is actually my favorite part of this tool, is that I can open up the chart in the advanced chart editor, make all my modifications, change the labels, change the font sizes, change the colors, all of those things. Click Save and Update, and all I have to do is actually just hit refresh inside CRM in order to see the new chart when it's a user chart. Otherwise, if it was a system chart, I would have to publish it first. I don't have to export the chart like I used to. I don't have to import it again. I don't have to click Import, select the file, import it, refresh, etc. So it's literally saving me a lot of time, and that whole process means that I can just change one property inside the tool, save it, update, hit refresh, and see those changes immediately. So it's basically sped up the process a lot, and I was actually very happy to experience that, because I think when you create these tools for the XM Toolbox and other tools, I did this initially thinking, we can do some more with charts. We can, make it easier to modify the XML for people who don't necessarily remember all of the different property names, all the different custom properties. You have a series, for example. If you have a bar chart versus a column chart, you have different custom properties that you can use. The tool is basically only giving you the options that are available for those different chart types, so you can just sit in the interface and make changes to them. And one thing I realized here shortly after we released this, I actually completely stopped doing manual XML edits myself and just started using the tool instead.
And you were like the king of the manual chart XML edits.
It's
got to be a good tool.
Yeah, and I was actually a little bit surprised too, and I was really happy that it worked out so well. because I used to memorize a lot of those different properties and tools and names, etc., that we need. And I actually realized this morning, actually, I was updating a chart and I had to type in some. I actually realized that I just didn't retain or try to remember all those XML properties as much any longer because they're all a part of the tool. Because I actually, for some reason, tried to do a manual update. I'm not just going to do a manual update. And then I was like, oh, that didn't work. And I just went back in the tool and I'm like, okay, yeah, I wrote that thing wrong because it tells me right then and there what to do. Yeah, it's been very helpful for the work that I've been doing. So I'm really happy about, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. We're always open to new ideas. If anyone has idea, find any bugs, definitely please let us know, because we're happy to update it. We do have a few more updates coming out for it, but mostly in terms of making the layout a little bit easier to use, group all those properties so they're in a more logical grouping. So we have all the labels items together, we have all the series items together, and so on. And hopefully do a few more instructions on where to find what property. So if you want to change the labels and on the axis, where do you find those versus the labels on the series themselves, so you can change those properly.
So what happens if you edit a chart in the advanced chart editor? Does it make the chart non-editable through the front end now?
So it depends on the changes that you make. So any styling, so any change in colors, change in labels, etc., will be retained, and you can actually still open them up in the editor and change out some of the series properties that you use, and it'll retain most of the information. Sometimes it'll override it depending on what you're doing, but mostly it will actually retain a lot of your customizations in there. So it's not a dead end. It's not like you create something in the advanced chart editor, you upload it, and then you can only update it in the toolbox from then on. You actually still have some options to make modifications to the chart itself inside the chart editor. The chart editor inside CRM. Okay, that's good, because that's the thing. If you make fetch XML changes to views, they become non-editable through the front end. So you want to keep in mind that may be a side effect depending on what kind of changes you make. Yeah, and I can give you an example, because the charts, for example, support up to 10 properties. So if you add like 10 aggregation points or 9 aggregation points, different series to your chart, which you can do when you modify the XML. You cannot do that inside Dynamics. It limits you to, I think it's about either 4 or 5 series. So if you have more, then you can't do any edits or updates to it inside the CRM editor itself. You can only do the edits inside the toolbox. Right, but that's a small price to pay. Most people, I find, once they set up the core chart, given the charts are fairly simple usually, with a series and a grouping. You're not typically making a ton of changes to them. But I mean, you do see people who do copy a chart and create a new one when they want to have one that's slightly different. Right, and you can still do that in most instances. Okay. Yeah, I think some of the changes, most of the changes, because you can do a lot with the aggregation. You can do a lot with KPIs and basically create what I like to call a key figures chart. You put a number of KPIs together on one chart and write them out. You basically override a lot of the styling. So you basically just have text that says your current height or opportunity has this value. Your last opportunity one was on this date, and it'll list a whole lot of those items. What you can also do is add, something I like to do is add watermarks and notes to the chart itself. So you can actually have a little box in the corner, in the back area, that either has a description about the chart itself, how to read it, or maybe just have like your corporate name, corporate logo, so you can see who this actually belongs to. So you can give it a little, corporate branding, so it doesn't look like all the standard charts. You can actually see what came with the solution, what you delivered versus what's standard.
Yeah. Have there been any changes substantially to the XML structure of charts since
Since
2011?
2011? So, unfortunately, no. There's been very few updates to what you can do with the charts from an XML perspective. And I'm sorry to say that it actually seems like you can actually now do less with XML editing than you used to be able to do. There was I think back in 2013, I wrote a blog post that was fairly popular now, how you can put a Gantt chart together on your opportunities or projects, for example. And that chart actually, interestingly, also appeared in the PSA solution for a while, which was a very similar design. So in the axis, you had all the dates on there. And back in 2013, you could actually modify the dates specifically. So you could say, hey, I just want to have this to say the month, and I just want the first 3 characters of the month, and I just want the first 3 characters of the month plus the day of the month. You had all those modification options, and they suddenly completely disappeared from the axis, and it would actually throw you an error if you tried to do any kind of modifications like that.
Wow.
So you kind of had to override that whole date section with something else, otherwise you would get those errors. So,
that Gantt date motivation, you didn't want to do that anyway.
Yeah, no, whatever. So it was kind of interesting. A few items like that kind of come up where they're actually taking away a little bit. I know when we came out with the new unified interface, the original donut chart that you could do with XML kind of disappeared, which is basically just a pie chart but with a hole in the middle. But sometimes it's nice to mix things up. Was actually then replaced by the other donut chart that you can only see in the unified interface. So now you actually have 2 types of donut charts inside the in the system. One that's, when you type it in, is capitalized, which is the one that goes for the unified interface. And then you have the old one, which is lowercase. So the casing is very important on the donut chart if you use those. Just keep that in mind if you're updating your
donuts.
system.
So here's a question for you. I guess, why would you use a donut chart? Is it the same as a pie chart and you just like donuts more than pies?
So that could actually be a main reason. From a functional perspective, they're actually exactly the same. However, if you do read some of the reports about how people visually read charts, and what the pie chart and donut charts do is like measure things out of the whole. The way a donut chart breaks out those different areas, it's basically easier for the eye to ballpark an estimate and say, something has like 33% or something, or 20% or something. Seeing that in a donut chart, you have a more accurate idea of that measure than you do in a full pie chart. Which is also one of the reasons that Power BI, for example, I think only has the donut chart or uses that by default instead of the pie chart.
Okay.
It's not just that's just a visual.
What about? Do you have any guidance or materials, irrespective of the tool, whether Power BI or Excel or Dynamics charts? Is there a good primer about what types of data you should visualize with which chart types? I've seen some stuff out there, but I don't know of a real concise one, because I find we have a lot of great tools, but a lot of people don't really know. I mean, I remember customers that have wanted to use pie charts to look at comparing size of accounts, and it just doesn't work because it's not showing percentage of a total.
Right. And I think that conversation can probably be a whole different episode, right? I think one of my classic pet peeves is, of course, the funnel chart, at least as it comes out of the box, often is used to show something that is not intended to show. Plus, we have other ways to show how opportunities, for example, flow through a business process and drop off at different stages, so we can visualize that much better than a funnel chart can, for example, which is essentially what the funnel is intended to show. So we may have to take that one up. I have seen a couple of different reports that kind of highlight those depending on what you're showing. But I think we should take that one up on a different episode.
Yeah, that maybe one of our next episodes we can do that. Okay. Well, this has been great, Ulrich, and I think we'll definitely recommend people should check out the Advanced Chart Editor if they haven't seen it yet. It'll make your life a lot easier. You can impress your users with some nice snazzy enhancements to charts that they can't do out of the box.
Right, and I actually want to add something to that one, because what I've started doing recently is I use the Advanced Chart Editor to do a lot of the visual changes to the chart. And recently I figured out that the Fetch XML builder will actually allow me to do a lot of the configurations with the fetch part. So when I do charts and many-to-many relationships, I need to link to other entities. The Fetch XML builder will basically give me all the names of the intersect tables, all the properties. I can just sit there and select them. Something that I used to sit and look up in the metadata in order to find. So I can use that to actually create new charts much quicker than I used to. So one of my hopes moving forward is that we want to see if we can incorporate the Fetch XML builder, where you jump to the Fetch XML builder for a little bit and finalize that part of the chart XML. So if you are working with charts and you've been doing it for a while and working with the XML, definitely check out putting the fetch part into the Fetch XML builder. You can get some very detailed information about how that data is being pulled that can help you create some even more advanced KPIs. So that's kind of the next step for us to look at when it comes to our tool here.
This has been Power BI and More with Ulrich Carlson and Joel Lindstrom. You can follow Ulrich at his blog, crmchartguy.com, or follow him at Twitter at crmchartguy. This episode is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.